evening. This is Tim Jones of Getting Clear with Tim Jones, and this is The Clear Picture. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode. I'm going to be talking to you this evening about momentum, in particular, negative momentum. Momentum is one of those things that, whether in our personal life or our professional lives, is crucial to our success. Positive emotion fuels us with energy and excitement and raises the levels of serotonin. It does wonders for us to have positive momentum. Whereas negative momentum can set in and actually cause you to begin to doubt and disbelieve who you are or what you're capable of because it makes you feel like you're stuck. And in all reality, you're not really stuck, but you feel stuck. And when you feel stuck, for all intents and purposes, you will be stuck. And so I want to talk tonight about momentum, negative momentum, positive momentum, being able to understand it and to manage it. To understand it, you got to be able to recognize when you're in negative momentum, recognize before it goes too far to that place where you're just so stuck that you have lost all hope. Got to be able to recognize it before it gets to that point. And then managing it has to do with understanding what habits to put in place. What things do I need to do? Do you need to do? Do we need to do on a consistent basis that will allow us to be able to properly manage negative momentum when we're in it? So it really has to do with redirecting our energies and reestablishing focus and then cultivating resilience. So I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. I recently had a conversation with my son as he was dealing with some things and going through, a situation or a set of circumstances that seemed to have created a negative momentum for him. There were several things that was happening that were working against him, and he'd been doing a wonderful job of managing that. But he came to a point where, man, it was just so much of it. It was such a barrage of things that was happening. And man, it brought him to that place where he began to question. And not only am I doing something wrong, but what's wrong with me? Why can't I break through? And that's so typical of what can happen in a negative momentum cycle. And so we talked about it and I shared some things with him. And as I was speaking with him about momentum, and I began to talk about the negative momentum and how we see negative momentum, something shifted even in my own thinking about it. And so I thought that we'd talk about that tonight, just as a way of fleshing it out in conversation, but also as a way of revealing and exposing the truth about negative momentum and how we deal with it or how we handle it. All of us have been in circumstances and situations before where we felt like, we've always said this, man, when it rains, it pours. We've said this, if it's not one thing, it's another. you know, we've said things like that to describe situations where we felt like we were in negative momentum. And we may not have described it as being in negative momentum, but there were a series of things that happened, of events that were working against as adversaries to what we were trying to do and where we were trying to go. And so what I found is that in being able to properly navigate yourself, mind, will, and emotions, when you're in a place like that, it takes a certain skill level. It takes, first of all, a certain awareness, an awareness of who you are, an awareness of what you are capable of. In other words, you got to know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, when you're in a negative momentum cycle, it can really, it can spun you out, and can send you to a dark place. And I'm convinced that happens a lot, especially when people deal with things like insecurities, anxieties, or even depression, right? That's the place where you can go to from the place of negative momentum if you don't stop it, right? And you can only really stop it by beginning with awareness, your awareness of who you are and what you're capable of. It's very, very important. I've talked so much the past couple of years about the I am revelation, understanding and knowing who you are and what you're showing up with. That's paramount. And as I continue to share, what was happening with my son and I in our conversation, it's important for me to share that one of the things that my wife and I always did with our children, we set their mindsets so that they could see themselves a certain way. We talked to them about not just being different, but understanding why they were different. And we raised them to believe not that they were better than anyone else, but that they could choose to be different based upon the choices that they made, and tried to give them reasons as to why not only was that necessary, but why it was a good thing. Because sometimes with kids, if you don't show them what the benefits of it is, on their level, they can't really buy into it. And then it kind of becomes why do I need to do that? Because I said so thing. Well, um, that may have worked in our day and age. It doesn't work today with young people. You've got to reason with them in a way that they can get a buy-in to whatever it is you're trying to teach them, or whatever it is you're trying to show them, or wherever it is you're trying to lead them. So we have to be intelligent in our responses and not just position ourselves as the authority. When you have true authority, you don't really have to position yourself as the authority, because the authority comes as influence. Okay. And when you have influence, you don't need to impose yourself on someone or on a situation. You simply show up walking in the power and the authority that you have based upon who you are. And people respect that. They see that, they respect that, and they will respond to that. So it's certainly that way in raising kids and children. So we have to be intelligent about how we position ourselves with our children. I used to say this all the time, that I choose to be, my wife and I have made a decision that we would choose to be accountable to our kids. Everybody wants their kids to be accountable to them as parents, but, you know, parents have to choose to be accountable to their kids as well. And we just found that that was a great benefit for us in terms of building relationships with our kids. And we certainly weren't perfect in any way, but man, I really do believe that because of the approaches, that some of the approaches that we had, I believe that we saved ourselves and our children some heartache and some frustration, and really kind of helped to propel them, in a direction that their lives would be not just positive, but impactful. So I wanted to say all of that to say, as I was sharing with my son, the reason why I was sharing with him the way that I was sharing with him about the negative momentum and how he was seeing it, was because we had already laid that groundwork. I had already laid that groundwork for him in his mind as it concerns who he is. So I could say to him that, listen, just because the events that are happening, is seem to be pushing you or coming against you and causing you to move in this direction where it feels like you're stuck in a place, that doesn't mean that that's your reality. Okay, your reality, you create that yourself. And if you allow circumstances and situations to become your reality, then you become the prisoner of your circumstances and situations. So we talked about that, and I reminded him that, listen, even in a place of negative momentum, you're still who God says you are. And you're still carrying what He said you're carrying. And you still have the same assignment that you've always had. Okay. That doesn't change. So you can choose to succumb to the tyranny of your circumstance, or you can choose to rise above that feeling of being stuck and recognize that you are still who you've always been, and then begin to, from that place, make the decisions, make the choices, change the habits, change whatever needs to be changed so that you can now begin to um, dominate in this situation. You first have to subdue before you can dominate. You can't dominate until you subdue. Well, what am I subduing? Well, what is it that's rising up in you? Is it fear? Is it doubt? Okay. Is it both of those? Is it confusion? Is it uncertainty? Is it all of those? If those are the things that are rising up in you, then those are the things that must be subdued. And sometimes you can't just subdue those things. You've got to subdue the things that are attached to them. Like fear of failure, that means that you failed once before, or at least you interpreted as failure, or someone interpreted it as failure for you, and you subscribed to their interpretation. Okay. If that's the case, then you got to go right to the interpretation. First of all, does anyone else have the right or the authority to interpret the events happening in your life? No. Every man has to interpret his own life and interpret the events happening in his own life. Even if he is interpreting them wrongly, it's still his power, his authority, and his responsibility to interpret what's happening in his life. And so many times we don't always have, or we're not always empowered um, to make good interpretations, especially when we don't know who we are, especially when we don't know what we're carrying, especially when we don't have a sense of our real and true value. And so that's why that's so important. See, I could go to that place with my son because I knew the framework had already been there. I knew the baseline for his identity and the baseline for his confidence was already there. So I just reminded him of that. So, in this thing of negative momentum, how do you begin to shift when you find yourself in a place like that or headed in that direction? Okay. Proverbs 25:10 says this: in the day of adversity, if your faith fails, your strength is small. In other words, when things get the hardest, when they are the toughest, right? If if you faint, okay, if you weaken out, if you fizzle out, if you give up, okay, in those times, it's because your strength is small. So build up your strength and you will have the capacity to withstand negative momentum and everything that's associated or that comes with it. In every situation, we have the ability to manage. Let me take that up a notch. In every situation, we have the responsibility to manage. To manage what? To manage our own earth, our own mind, will, emotion, spirit, soul, and body. The mandate on humankind, on mankind, is to be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth, replenish it, and have dominion over it. Well, the first earth that any man, is to have dominion over is the earth suit that he is living in and everything that comes with it. So your own mind, your own will, your own emotions, your own spirit, your own soul, your own body, that's the first line of subduing. Okay. So when we're in a situation, the opportunity is to subdue my mind, my will, and my emotions. What's happening in my mind? What's happening in my emotions? Okay. And then what's happening in the physical? All right. If I can manage properly, have a proper baseline in my thinking about who I am, what I'm carrying, and my true value, it will affect what I eventually feel and how long I feel it. Okay. We all go through things where emotions come. Emotions are just, they're like uh, sign plates. They're like signs on the road. They're telling you something. They tell you to go this way or go that way, or don't go here, don't go there, stop, go, slow down, speed up. They're telling you something. And so emotions are always telling you something. Many times we take the emotion, because emotions are so strong and they can be the strongest thing happening in that moment. And many times we make decisions out of what is the strongest thing in that moment. And if it's how we feel, then we make decisions out of that. Okay, but is that the wisest thing to do? And is that the thing that's going to keep you moving in the right direction, or give you the ability to shift when you are moving in the wrong direction? In other words, can you baseline on how you feel? Can I suggest to you? No, you cannot baseline on how you feel. You must baseline on what you know, on your thinking. What do I mean when I say baseline? I mean, gather your footing, get a place of stability. Sometimes that can really be difficult when you're sliding down a slippery slope, when you're spiraling down a wormhole or a rabbit hole. It can be hard because it feels like momentum is against you. It feels like something is pulling you in that direction. Okay. So the feeling is going to be the strongest thing that's happening in those types of moments. What I feel is what is most top of mind. Okay. And so I really have to make a concerted effort to shift and to turn, to redirect energy, because management is about redirecting, first and foremost within ourselves, our energies. That has to do with what you are feeling, because what you are feeling creates an energy for everything else, your whole being. Okay. So redirecting that energy away from what's happening, what the events or the things that are happening, redirecting that energy to something else. Well, what am I doing redirecting that energy? There's a scripture that says it, for the joy, it was talking about Jesus, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. In other words, the stuff that he was going through, he wasn't focused on the stuff he was going through. He was focused on the end result of him coming out on the other side and enduring and receiving the crown, receiving the goal, hitting the mark, getting the reward. He was focused on the reward and not on what he was going through. Okay. And so that's a real thing for us. It's a real opportunity for us. And it's a real challenge for us. Nevertheless, that is the work that has to be done in a situation or in a moment of negative momentum. Energies must be redirected. Okay. Focus must be reestablished. Well, you can't reestablish focus until you redirect energy. Okay. Then you can reestablish focus. Reestablish focus. Yeah, for a moment, I was looking at my circumstances and my situations. For a moment, I was looking at what was happening and how I was feeling about it. But now that I'm redirecting this energy, now I'm looking at what my why. Why am I doing this anyway? Right? And I reestablish that focus. And now I can begin to cultivate resilience. In other words, I can begin doing the things that I know to do that's going to help to bring me stability. Okay, baseline. All right. So, in any difficult moment, in any spiraling moment, in any anxious moment, how do you or how can you baseline? Get your stability. That is what managing negative momentum is really about. One last thing I want to say about that, I want to share with you concerning that. Philippians 4 through 8 begins rejoice, always rejoice. Again, rejoice. Keep on rejoicing. In everything, just rejoice, right? And it says, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious, well, let's say it this way. I like the Message Bible way of saying it. Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. Okay. Yes, the King James says, be anxious for nothing. Okay. The original King James says, be careful for nothing. That word careful means anxious. Okay. Don't worry about it. Right. Don't worry, be happy. Well, don't worry, but pray. He says, don't worry about anything, pray about everything. Okay. Pray with supplication in sincerity, not out of ritual. Okay. I'm coming to my Father. I'm praying to my creator out of my relationship with him. Okay. He's my Father. I'm his son. I have a right to come to him out of that relationship alone. Okay. Even if I've been a wayward son, I still have the right to come to my Father and repent or say, I'm sorry, God. I know I haven't acted like your son or your daughter, but I'm still your son. I'm still your daughter. We can come to him. That's what it means. It says, come as you are. Okay. Because we all have a relationship, even if it's just at this point, a creator and a created thing relationship. Maybe you haven't realized or wrapped your mind around or your being around the fact that you are a child of God and what that means to be a child of God, what it means to be a son or a daughter of God. Maybe you haven't really considered that yet. But I'm saying to you, even if you haven't, even if you only thing you can do is come to him as his creation, come that way. But come sincerely. Come, okay, in your most honest and humble way to come. So pray about everything with supplication and thanksgiving. Thanksgiving? Yes, thanksgiving. Okay. I like to use this example a lot. I used to use it a lot when I was working with troubled teenagers and their families. Listen, if I say to you, um, I'm going to get you some ice cream, okay, and I make this promise to you that I give you my word that I'm going to get you some ice cream. That my word is my promise. Okay, so if I give you my word, I'm promising you, that I'm going to get you some ice cream. You have a credible right because I made that promise to you. You have a credible right to come to me and ask me if I haven't gotten you ice cream, and especially if I didn't give you a time period in which I was going to get the ice cream for you. You have a credible right to come to me and say, what's up with the ice cream? When are we going to get the ice cream? Now, if I said I'm going to get you the ice cream by a certain time, and then I didn't do it by that time, now, guess what? If I didn't do it by that time, if I actually told you a time and I didn't do it by that time, that's on me, right? You don't have to believe nothing else I say. You don't have to. Okay? But if I didn't give you a time, but I said I was going to do it, you have a credible right to come to me and inquire of me concerning what I promised. Okay? But you got to know what I promised. Because if you can't come to me asking for a hamburger, and I didn't promise you a hamburger, I promised you ice cream. Okay. Coming and asking me for a hamburger is not you don't have a credible right to do that because I didn't promise you a hamburger. But if I promise you ice cream, you have a credible right to come and inquire of me concerning that ice cream. Now, here's the best way to come. The best way to come is to come to me and say, wow, Mr. Tim, Pastor Tim, thank you. I really appreciate the fact that you thought enough of me that you wanted to get me ice cream. I'm still just marveling over that. I really appreciate that. Okay. Now you're putting me in remembrance of what I promised without saying, where's my ice cream? You come in and you're thanking me for even considering getting you ice cream. Boy, you know what that does for me? That makes me want to get it even sooner. because of your mindset, because of your state of your heart, because of your positioning. You're not showing up like I owe you something. You're showing up in appreciation and thanksgiving. Thank you, man. You didn't have to do that. Thank you for just considering it. I really appreciate that. See, that's a whole different way of showing up. Okay. That will redirect energy real fast. Okay. So he says, be anxious for nothing. Don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. And, through prayer and supplication, honestly and sincerely, okay, make your requests known. Okay? And making your requests known, you don't have to say, you said you was gonna get me some ice cream. Again, you can come, that Thanksgiving piece in there is really powerful. Come thanking me for the ice cream that I haven't even gotten you yet. Right? When you can come that way, the scripture says that the peace of God that passes all understanding shall rule and guard your heart and mind. Now, let me help you with this peace of God that passes all understanding. I don't understand why I'm doing everything right, why it seems like, it feels like, to the best of my knowledge, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and I'm still taking these negative hits. I'm still taking, a barrage. I'm dealing with and suffering from a barrage of things that are not helping to validate me, or not helping to push me in this direction, or not helping me to be able to move in a positive or think positive. Everything is negative that's coming against me, and I don't understand why. It's okay not to understand why. That situation doesn't require you to understand why. If you are going to redirect energies, reestablish focus, and cultivate resilience, you're going to have to stop trying to understand why this is happening and focus on the one in the middle of it who's made the promise. See, if you focus on the promise, okay, the sting, the weight, the pull of the things that are happening, they won't work. Excuse me. They'll no longer be working against you. Now they'll be working for you. You know what we call that? Tension. Tension. It's the same thing that happens with the slingshot. You pull it back, the string, the rubber bands. I used to kill birds with a slingshot. My parents wouldn't allow me to have a BB gun or a pellet gun. I couldn't have any kind of gun. The only thing I could have was a slingshot. So I got really good with a slingshot, right? But you pull your rubber band tied to, whatever it is you got in your hand, a rock or whatever it is, right? And you pull it back as far as you can pull it. Now every inch it goes back, right, is not designed to keep it going back. It's designed to create enough tension to launch it as far as it can possibly go in the positive direction. That's what happens when you begin to redirect energies while you are in negative momentum. You become the rock in the slingshot. Okay. And the things that are happening, the events that are happening that are seemingly aimed at taking you out, they stop working against you and they start working for you. It's called tension. And tension creates, I want to read something. I saw it and I wanted to read it because I thought it was so powerful. What tension does. Right? Where did it go? So powerful. Tension can directly influence change in momentum of an object by applying a force that alters the velocity, that alters its velocity. So let me read it again. I'm just going to read it straight out. Tension can directly influence the change in momentum of an object by applying a force that alters its velocity. In other words, when you begin to shift the energies, it slows down the momentum going in the negative direction. That's what tension does. The farther you pull it back, right? Yeah, up here you could go fast, but the more tension it creates, it slows it down. That's what happens. So when you're in the day of adversity, you don't faint. Okay. When you're in negative momentum, you're able to shift the energies because you don't worry. Okay. Don't worry about anything. Pray about everything. You use the tools that you have that will create the tension necessary to alter and shift the momentum that we've called negative, and then realize that this is actually positive momentum moving in a negative direction until it reaches a place where it can maximize its forward thrust. That, my friends, is managing negative momentum. I hope you got something out of that. I know that I learned something, and I believe that my son did too. A few days later, well, not even a few days later, the next day, things turned around for him. And the very thing that he was trying to do, he was able to do it. He was able to get it. And so I hope that encourages you. I want to thank you for tuning in and getting the clear picture. As I sign off, I want to remind you to live full so that you can die empty. You want to make sure that you are finished when you finish. Thank you and good night. Thank you for watching this episode of Getting Clear with Tim Jones, The Clear Picture. I want to invite you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube. Make sure you click the bell so that you can be notified when we release a new video. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Getting Clear with Tim Jones, The Clear Picture.